Now that we're all set, we'll look at how RevMan can support you if you want to do your first meta-analysis. So I'll switch back to my presentation to show you the different types of analysis that you can do. Right. In this section, we'll be setting up meta-analysis, importing study data. I'll also show you the different review article headings and export content from RevMan. But when you're creating your analysis in RevMan, there are two different types. You can create manual analysis, which allow you to paste data directly into the data tab. So this can be good for simple analysis with smaller data sets, and also you need to have the data already in the structured format that RevMan expects for you to be able to paste it. This may be good if you're planning on doing few analysis with little analysis data and you already have the data in the right format. The next type is automatic analysis. Because in most cases, meta-analyses are more complicated and require, for example, combining arms, combining data on arms with between arm data, subgrouping by specific characteristics, or you have larger data sets, or you're looking to do sensitivity analysis and reuse data between analysis for several analyses. And in this case, automatic analysis are usually the best option. It also allows you to make sure that you have a really structured process around how you plan for and work with your analysis. Okay. Let me show you RevMan then. So we'll go back to showing RevMan. And for this section, we'll be using a practice review. That I have already created. This practice review belongs with a training resource that's also available on our training environment, where you can actually go through this whole exercise on your own with support. So let's go ahead and start adding an analysis. So the first step you need to do is not actually to set up your analysis, but to think about which interventions, outcomes, and covariates that will be relevant for your review. So we'll go to the review criteria section of the review. You'll see that this review already has some entered data to save us some time. The first tab is where you will describe your granular interventions. This should be that you want to analyze in your analysis. This includes both experimental and control interventions. Moving on to the next tab, the intervention groupings tab, allow you to create groupings for comparisons of less granular interventions, which will include one or more of the granular interventions. You can see in this case, instead of looking at the different types of antibiotics, we're grouping them to vitamin D any form, and then versus placebo. In the outcome tab, you'll define the outcomes that you want to evaluate your intervention by. You will also be selecting whether the data type is dichotomous or continuous, and if you like, you can add a unit of measure. The covariate tab allows you to define characteristics that describe the study in a way that could influence how you interpret the results. In this case, we're looking at daily dose, and in general, it can be used then to, for example, subgroup by this covariate or by filtering, but we'll look at that soon. So now that we have the right review criteria prepared, we're going to start adding our analysis. So in the left-hand navigation, navigate to the analysis. You can see that I've already added some analysis, but we're going to add our own analysis group. So I'm going to call it vitamin D versus, it should be any form, versus placebo, because here we'll be interested in the more general question rather than a specific antibiotics. So rather than a specific vitamin D, sorry. So after you've given the analysis group a name, you can go ahead and add an analysis directly. So for these analyses, we're going to use the automatic option. And once you do that, you can give the analysis a name. So the first analysis that we're going to add ourselves are for one or more exacerbations, very hard word, which is one of the outcomes that were already defined. You'll need to tell RevMan what type of data you're interested. And so for the data source, you can choose either to include only arm level data, only contrast level data, so that's between arm data, or you can pick either but preferring arm level, or either but preferring contrast level. So in this scenario, I'm just going to go ahead and pick either but preferring arm level data. And then the next step is to select the outcome that we're interested in. And so you can see it's this one. And now the next step is important because we had those granular interventions, but we're interested in the more broad comparison. We're going to select the intervention grouping, vitamin D form versus placebo. And then within those, we'll be able to select the interventions there. And that was vitamin D, any form, and then versus placebo as the control. And so now we have the synthesis PICO set up. And the next step is selecting the statistical settings. And so as you can see, RevMan has these info signs that can really help you with your choices of methods. These go to the Cochrane handbook, so please make sure to use them. I do want to go ahead and show you some new methods that we've recently introduced. So if you select random effects, you'll now be able to select two different types of heterogeneity estimators. So there's a new one called RevMan. You'll be able to show confidence interval for heterogeneity estimator on the forest plot, and you'll also be able to show the prediction interval for total on forest plot. The summary effect CI method is also has an addition, so you can also select HKSJ here. Right, and if I move to the graphs tab here, you can see that it's empty. So there is not yet any data in this analysis, but that's what we want to change now. I'll just go back and show you the settings for the analysis that were already set up so that you know how to do that. We'll look at editing this first analysis, which is looking at the same outcome, but now it's interested in a specific vitamin D. So this is a more granular comparison. And so you can see here that the intervention grouping is not selected, but instead you're able to pick the experimental, which was the specific intervention versus placebo. Moving on to the next analysis, we now have same outcome, but subgrouping by the covariate daily dose. So here it's, again, the more broad comparison, but as you can see, a group studies by, we've selected covariate and then daily dose. And you can already see here, looking at the graph, that the two subgroups are already added, although there's no data yet. Next up, we'll look at the final analysis before we get to import data into the review. So you can also decide to filter by a covariate. So this has a similar setup, but instead of subgroups, we've selected a filter by daily dose and made sure only to include one of the daily doses. So that analysis will look like that. So still no data. After you've set up the analysis, it's really important that you make sure you use the right data extraction templates so that you can then import data into RevMan. We strongly recommend that you use the templates available in RevMan knowledge base, as this means there's no additional work for you to import the data. If you like, you can set up your analysis like we have and then export the empty analysis tables and use that as a starting point for your data extraction. Another recommended option is to use our partner tool Covidence, since they also allow you to export in the format that RevMan allows you to import if you're using study-centric data. So I have some files prepared with extracted data that we will now try to import. Let's navigate to the dashboard. So on the dashboard, you can see in the actions menu, there's an import study data. What you do is you will need to select 3 of these files: study information, study arms, and study results. I will select these. So we have study information. RevMan will then validate, and it's saying yes, no issues, great. Study arms, open, no issues again, that's great. And then the final one is the study results. Great. Okay, so we can see that there are no validation issues and we're ready to import. So I'm going to go ahead and import study data. It's asking us to confirm, so we'll do that. Great. So we can see that in total 16 studies were imported, and we'll head over to the study section just to see how that could look like. So I'll go ahead and edit one of these studies. You can see now that there is some study arm information and, more importantly, some results. So for this study, there are results reported, but not for the outcomes that we were interested in. So looking at the next one, we do have one with contrast level that we would expect to be included. So let's now head over to the analysis and see if they have been populated. It's nice that at least some parts of the process of conducting a systematic review is fairly swift. So after you've put all the work down into data extraction and importing it to RevMan, it's hopefully really nice to be able to see the analysis populated. So you can see here all this data pulled in, and you can see that some of the numbers have more decimals, which usually means that RevMan needed to do some kind of calculations in order to include the data in the meta-analysis. So next up, I'll show you how to add a manual analysis. So this example, I will just add an analysis. Instead, I will click manual and I will just call it adverse events, dichotomous, and then I will move to the data tab. So in order to paste data here, I will need to select right studies that I have the data for, and they need to be in the same order as the data I have that I'm going to paste in. So you can see I've now added these data rows. They're empty, but I have the data in an Excel sheet. Then I can copy and let's see. Then I can paste it into RevMan, and that completes the meta-analysis here. Okay, so those were the two ways that you can generate analysis in RevMan. And once you have your meta-analysis and forest plots ready, RevMan can also guide you to write a systematic review by selecting. And so I'll just show you how that could look like. The review that we added before, my new review, we use the template, which means that once you open the text section, you will have quite detailed guidance of how you can complete these sections. And once you've done that and you're happy with your text, you can also export it. But before we do that, I want to show you a new feature that we have released in RevMan called the dynamic analysis results. Let me just, I'm going to go ahead and add a new practice review because I want to use a review that has some realistic text. So here in this review, if you navigate to the text section and then to the results, synthesis of results, you will see that these authors have manually reported the results for this outcome. And so we're going to go ahead and replace that with a dynamic link that whenever the results in the analysis changes, the data reported in the text also change. So just in the toolbar, click the link, internal link, and then select the analysis result. You can then select the analysis that you want to insert result for and which of these data you want to include. So you can see that's the same and will be updated. You can see that the certainty of the evidence is not specified here. So we're going to go ahead and update that. I'm going to click this, go to edit the analysis, and we'll actually change the effect measure as well, just to see how that changes the result in the text. And then we're also going to go ahead and select a certainty of evidence. Now we'll go back to the text section, synthesis of results, and there you could see the result update automatically, hopefully saving you a lot of work, keeping all your results up to date whenever the data changes in RevMan. I'll just briefly show you how you can then export data from RevMan. So navigate to the dashboard. I will need to go back to a review that is not a practice review for this because it's not available in those reviews. So on the dashboard for our new created review, you can select a version in the history, click export, and here you'll see the different options available for export. So for example, you can export the article as a PDF or as HTML. You can also export data such as study data as CSV and references as RIS. You can then tick any of the options and generate the export package. Once that is generated, you'll get a button to download here. Below the history. I think maybe I missed clicking it. And then you can open that. Oh, there we go. There it completed. So you can see an export package was generated. You can download it and then open on your computer to, for example, submit to a journal.